Happy Bicycle Day to all of you lovely humans watching today's video. For those of you who don't know, Bicycle Day is the day that Albert Hofmann, the guy who accidentally discovered LSD's psychedelic properties, had the first ever accidental psychedelic trip as he was riding home from work on his bicycle. Now, the story goes as follows. The psychedelic drug, lysergic acid diethylamide, was first synthesized on November 16th, 1938 by the Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann. But it was not until 5 years later, on April 19, 1943, that these psychedelic properties were found. Now, the main purpose of the synthesis was to find a respiratory and circulatory stimulant. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the properties were far beyond anything that anyone had ever dreamt of. So basically what happened is he was in his lab, he accidentally ingested 250 micrograms. Now, for those of you who don't know, that is a tiny, tiny amount. Like, you could barely see it with the naked eye. It is so small. He had no idea just how insanely potent the chemical was. So as he was leaving, he started to have, the first ever psychedelic effects. So he really had no idea what was going on. He rode his bicycle home as the trip intensified. Upon arriving home, he was seeing colors, fractals, geometry, overlaying surfaces, all the traditional psychedelic effects. He began to convince himself that his neighbor was a witch, and he had a doctor come visit his house to make sure that he wasn't going to die, who found nothing wrong with him, physically speaking, except for some very large dilated pupils. Now, normally on this monumentous day, I will take acid with a guest, but today we are not doing that. I'm on a pretty big break from all of these compounds. As I've told you guys, I don't even microdose anymore. So what I'm going to do instead is answer some of your questions. Now, I haven't done a Q&A in a very long time. It's probably been over a year. If you guys want to be a part of the next Q&A video, head on over to my Instagram page. It's Adam is Psyched. There will be a link in the comments. And, follow me on there. And when I randomly do these Q&A videos, you'll see my post notification, and then you can ask your question there for the next one. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump right into this video. Benjamin Vikingen asks, what is your most memorable experience with a compound? And side question, how are you doing these days? Wish you all the best. Most memorable experience has to be the one that Tales from the Trip did an animated video on. If you guys haven't seen it, I will provide a link up here. It is probably my all-time favorite experience, and keep in mind I've had a lot of experiences. It's the time where I was on a light dose of acid and I consumed DMT, and I forced myself to stay conscious while looking at my reflection in the mirror, and it proceeded to morph into multiple heads. It looked like I was looking at all my past lives. It then finally landed on a reptile face, and I proceeded to pass out feeling like I had all of the answers to the universe, which makes no freaking sense. Oh, and how am I doing these days? I've been good. As you guys know, there was some trauma that I was going through, and I would say that I'm making it out to the other side. It has been hard, but I'm doing my best. Always find silver lining and everything. Track A says, this is more of a request, I guess, but when you mention trip killers such as benzodiazepines, you never mention that these drugs have potential for abuse. Could you do that in the future? I have mentioned many times that they have potential for abuse. Maybe not in every video, just because it would get redundant. But I can mention it right now. A lot of you guys know that there's a substance called a benzodiazepine, which is commonly prescribed for anxiety, as well as, if someone's presented to the hospital showing symptoms of psychosis, they'll give you something like diazepam to calm you down. And there are thousands, maybe millions of people who are addicted to these substances. In fact, it's one of the hardest compounds to kick. The withdrawals are brutal, and they can last sometimes over a year. It's absolutely incredibly hard to get off of them. And if you are someone who favors these substances, then you should probably avoid using it as a trip killer. Luckily for me, I've never liked the effects. I just feel kind of slow and I guess calm, but I feel calm regularly, probably from daily meditation practice. So I've never really seen a benefit to them, but there are people who get heavily addicted and it destroys their life. So there's the warning. Granted, they do work fantastic to kill a trip. Javal asks, thoughts on mixing Phenibut with LSD? For those of you who don't know, Phenibut is a compound that works with the same pharmacological profile as GHB, albeit it's less potent, and a lot of people actually use it for its anxiolytic, calming properties. They also claim that it defeats their social anxiety, making it a substance of choice for people who are trying to go out and meet women and stuff. But there are some reports of people mixing it with psychedelics and having seizures. Now, I'm not sure the validity of all of these or if it's necessarily very common, but just because I've read a few, I would advise not mixing it with anything or using it as a trip killer, period. It's Educate says, what do you think it will take for the U.S. to legalize psychedelic for medical or recreational use? To be honest, it would probably take them seeing that there was, some green money potential in it. You want your answers, just follow the money. If there's really no potential to monetize it in the way that would give them the best reward for their investment, they're probably not going to do it. And that's why pharmaceuticals are king, because they can patent one and then they own the rights to it, and then no one else can replace it for X number of years. And you can't find it in nature, so you're kind of stuck with these compounds that they push on you, and they all have side effects. And then you got to take another substance for the side effect of that one, and then another substance for the side effect of that one. And before you know it, you're taking like 5 things, all stemming from one damn thing that you could probably find a replacement for in nature. So the whole pharmaceutical thing is a big scam, and a lot of the substances, like their push for opioids, get people addicted to life, which leads to more detrimental addictions such as heroin or fentanyl, because it's cheaper and people run out of money blowing all their cash on this stuff. So this account doesn't exist asks, can people truly change? In my experience, it's very rare for people to change. I mean, I'm a little biased because I have gone through many changes, but it's taken reaching a point of absolute discomfort. You basically have to become more uncomfortable with the situation staying the same than the thought of changing it in order to ever change. And a lot of people do everything they can to stay in their comfort. As someone who's recently gone through some massive changes that have thrust me headfirst into the pits of discomfort, I can say that I wouldn't have, I can agree, like I wouldn't have gone through my own personal changes if it wasn't forced upon me. So a lot of the time people don't change unless they are forced to, and life doesn't always comply and give you the situations that give you no choice but to change. People, like I said, they stay in their comfort bubbles, and it's very, very rare for someone to change while they are comfortable. Discomfort is the key ingredient to eliciting change in most people. So if you want to know if people change, you got to look at whether or not they're in a position where they have to or not, because otherwise it is extremely, extremely rare. And then there's some people that can't change. There's certain personality disorders. One comes to mind, NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. If it's a person who has this, there's actually not a single documented case of them ever recovering. At best, they can become self-aware of what they're doing and the harmful way that they're treating people in their life. And there are some people on YouTube who are self-aware narcissists who it appears they have changed, but the fundamental core pieces of their personality, such as little to absolutely zero empathy, is something that can never be healed. So when you're asking if people can change, you gotta see if they're fundamentally a healthy person to begin with, or if they have some kind of personality disorder. Others can be managed, such as bipolar, or what's the other one? Borderline personality disorder. Borderline shares a lot of traits with narcissism, except they do experience empathy, and it can be medicated with those lovely pharmaceuticals that I just talked about. So if people can change, you really just got to look at, A, are they being forced to? And B, do they have some kind of personality disorder that's preventing it from being possible? My heart goes out to people who have NPD. I know it's a bad place to feel anything for them, because then they can take advantage of you, but they really are in a lot of pain, and they're hurting inside, and they're projecting their pain onto everybody around them. So if you're somebody who's dealing with a person like that and you're hoping that they change one day, fat chance. Your best bet, regardless of it's a coworker, a parent, a sibling, a romantic partner, your best bet is to get as far away from them as possible. And it seems the only thing you really can do is go no contact in those situations. 3 Chorta says, were you in Edinburgh recently? I saw someone who looked exactly like you and almost went up and said hi. How did you know I was? No, I'm kidding. I've never been there. So no, it wasn't me. LXB2729 asks, how can psychedelics awaken humanity and guide them away from the New World Order and the powers in charge? I mean, Terence McKenna probably would have suggested that if everyone ate mushrooms, then there would be mass change. I think Joe Rogan has played with that idea too. As for what do I think, I don't know if they can really awaken humanity. I mean, a good example is you can give 2 people, say acid or mushrooms, and one of them will have this profound experience that'll completely change the way they view reality. It'll change everything about their beliefs. They could go from being non-religious to religious in some sense. Like, there are massive changes that can occur, and then the other person can take it and they'll just see some pretty colors. So it really depends on where the person is in their, for lack of a better term, it sounds pretentious, but spiritual journey. Depending on how much research they're doing, how much philosophy they're gobbling up. it is all going to play a massive role in whether or not a psychedelic is going to have a profound impact or just be a fun thing that they do recreationally with their friends sometimes. I've seen both, and unfortunately, it's more common, I think, for psychedelics to not be profound for a large amount of people, especially if they're not mentally there whatsoever. They can even have a profound experience and they'll just brush it off. There's so many different personality types and different kinds of people where it varies so dramatically, and unfortunately, there's very few compounds that are known to give people that face-to-face with God life-changing experience. One that comes in mind is 5-MeO-DMT, which does have a lot of risks involved. People have died from accidentally taking too much. They've stopped breathing. But when you're talking about things that are more recreationally used, like mushrooms or acid, I don't think if we dose the entire world, everything would change. Some people might get shooken up and they'll start down the road of changes. But if you don't integrate the experience afterwards properly, then nothing really profound is going to happen. In fact, you could have a mind-blowing experience and then 2 weeks later just return back to your normal life because society is heavy, man. And being stuck in this unhealthy world can reverse the effects of, just one powerful evening. I've seen it happen. It's happened to me. I don't think there's anything that's just going to be a magic pill that just wakes people up. I'm sorry. Stephanie Crimble says, do you think there's any connection between the psychedelic experience and the spiritual realm? Are we tapping into the spiritual when we trip, like psychic abilities, or is it just in our heads? I mean, this whole reality is just in your damn head, right? I mean, like, I am just seeing, I'm not actually seeing anything. What looks like is outside is actually happening inside, which is a trip all on its own. So do I think that it unlocks psychic abilities during the experience, especially if you're having a shared experience with someone? Then for sure. I think you can unlock those abilities. I don't see why not. I've had telepathic encounters with certain people while on substances. Unfortunately, once it wears off, then people generally return back to their baseline in most instances. But yeah, I think there is so much mystery around these substances, and they have such a huge array of potential that we haven't even tapped into yet because we don't really have the tools to measure these types of experiences. And most people just pass them off as, oh, it was all in your head. And people generally aren't really open to the potential that there is something more mysterious and magical going on, which, of course, I've seen, and a lot of you guys have seen. Spence1002 says, do you know how much we appreciate everything you've done for the community? How many people your videos have helped and kept safe? How much we're glad to see your personal growth. Thank you, Spence. I appreciate that. And I guess I'm highlighting this comment because, I can be sometimes bad at receiving compliments. I'm not the best at it. But I do appreciate the love, everybody. I do. As I recently said, I have recently gone through some really big challenges, and I'm still over here grinding away, trying to grow this channel, help more people, bring more awareness. It's a fun mission, it's a fun goal, and I'm here to help. This has helped my personal growth tremendously, just coming to terms with some very scary hard truths. So I feel like I am constantly growing and changing. Sometimes I feel like I'm regressing, I'm not gonna lie. I think growth doesn't look like this, right? It's like one step forward, 2 steps back sometimes, but you got to keep that one step forward in the forefront of your mind so you don't just focus on the negative. Sometimes it is hard to focus on positive when the negative is so overwhelming and in your face, but I do my very best. Here's an interesting question. Indie Kick says, how big of a role does body weight play in dosing for LSD or psilocybin? Have you noticed any differences in potency or intensity as you've gained/lost weight over the years? I actually don't think body weight, like for some substances, it plays a huge role, like say alcohol. But for stuff like psychedelics, I haven't really noticed body weight, in my experience, or just witnessing other people play that big of a role. It might have a little role, but it kind of depends on the person. Everyone has such a different sensitivity to these things where I've seen some big guys get blasted from small amounts, and I've actually seen some little people, females actually, who generally are more sensitive, need monstrous doses. And I think this all comes down to what your natural level of certain enzymes are and how well you metabolize certain substances. So body weight doesn't always play much, if any, role in a lot of psychedelics. Maybe for things like MDMA, but with psychedelics, not really. Sheaf Keef says, can you do a Hot Ones episode? Y'all look alike. I used to hear this a lot more before recently, and I went through some changes. But I'm never gonna be invited on Hot Ones unless like this channel starts just blowing the f up. Otherwise, I'm much too small of a creator to be invited on a show like that. I mean, they do like big ass celebrities, but I would go. I love hot sauce. Lil Millie DeRochefort says, "What's wrong with you?" Everything. Everything is wrong with me. Dana Devour says, "I discovered you through your at Shambhala content on YouTube. Will you be attending this year?" I think so. I have been invited back this year, and yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be going. I'm going to plan something really special this year. I want to go beyond just throwing a mic in people's faces and being like, "What drugs are you on?" I want to do something a little more interesting. So yeah, I guess I'll be attending. Anyway, I think that's enough for this video. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. If you want to pick up one of our awesome trip blankets, head on over to psychsubstance.shop. If you want to see the uncut version of some of these videos with the stuff we cannot show on the YouTube, go to our Patreon page. Of course, some of these videos can't be monetized, so your support regardless helps me keep the channel going. Link in the description and comments. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Leave a comment for the algorithm. And I hope you guys all have a lovely, happy bicycle day. And yeah, have a good trip for me. Cheers.